Good evening. We are here today to talk about families. Families come in many different forms. Some are loving and highly functional and supportive. They really seem to get along. Maybe you're from a family like that, or maybe you're not. But chances are, if you don't know one, you've probably seen one on television. Families like the Bradys come to mind. They always seem to get along. Or the Waltons. They somehow managed to fill a house with love, even though they were dirt poor during the Great Depression. And then there are the Huxtables, a doctor married to a lawyer whose family always figured things out in less than 30 minutes. Again, those are the happy and functional families. But all families don't operate that way. Some are mired in chaos and in controversy. Families like the Osbournes, they suffered through infidelity and substance abuse. And the Kardashians, sometimes those girls just can't get along, proving two things. Sibling rivalry is a thing, and pretty people have problems too. And then there is the worst place of all for dysfunctional families. They end up on the Jerry Springer show, and no family really wants that. Suffice it to say, families are complicated. They come in many different forms. And I'm here today to introduce you to a theorist who spent his entire career unraveling and unpacking the complicated family dynamic. His name is Salvador Minuchin, and he is the father of structural family therapy. Salvador Minuchin was born on October 13th, 1921, in San Salvador, Argentina. He was the eldest of three children born of Russian Jewish immigrants. He received his medical degree in 1947 and became a pediatrician, but he left his practice to join the Israeli army. He married in 1951 and had two children. Minuchin eventually moved to New York City to study psychiatry, and he worked at a group home for delinquent boys. And let me tell you, these were some pretty tough kids. And it was there Minuchin came to the conclusion that traditional therapy simply was not working. These kids were not making any progress. He decided a better approach would be not just to treat the patient, but to explore the entire family dynamic as a way to get to the root of problematic behaviors. And so that is how structural family therapy was born. The idea is to address the entire group and not just individual members. Structural family therapists also strive to join the family, to act as a sort of participant in order to get that job done. Here is Minuchin himself explaining his goal and his role.
My approach to them is unless you demonstrate that you are not normal, I am in a position in which I can be a coach, a helper, but I will not consider that anything is serious. You will need to demonstrate that to me. So that is a way of entering. A way of entering in these families is also a supportive one. You are trying a difficult job. I know the difficulties of trying to couple at the time that you need to parent. It's an extremely complex operation. So I enter like that, and my first contact is trying to contact as many people as I can. So in terms of the way in which I work, I try to make contact with people, I try to be friendly till I can create some situation in which two people can talk with each other, that are moments for me of disengaging and begin to look at processes instead of paying attention to content. So at the point in which I get people to talk with each other, then I begin to hear content and relationship messages.
And the theory behind structural family therapy is as profound as it is simple. By joining the family unit, the therapist gets a better idea and a better picture of how all of the moving parts fit together, or why they don't. And the goal of this theory is to prevent negative behaviors from continuing by interrupting the family's power structure and changing the style of interaction. It also promotes growth and encouragement in individuals by building family support. The bottom line is to provide new ways to solve problems and improve interactions among all members of the group. Simply put, Minuchin's version of structural family therapy provides a roadmap for both the therapist and for the family itself. Here's an example of his theory in practice with one family who is struggling, a brother, sister, and a father.
It's one thing to talk about the relationships in your family, but I think what might make this a little bit more clear is to have you guys reenact a scenario that typically has happened in your family, an argument that's happened per se, and this will kind of help me see the family dynamics at work. So, Ben, what's something that's happened lately, or an argument perhaps that you've had with a family member?
The other night, I got home from my buddy Paul's place. It wasn't late. It was like 2:30, 3 in the morning. Park in the driveway. I'd leave a little room so someone in the garage can get out. If they can't, I always leave my keys right by the front door. Come in, go to bed. Wake up the next morning like 6:30. Heather's there pounding on my door, yelling at me to move my car.
Okay.
I say, move it yourself. The keys are right there by the door. No.
Okay.
No. She makes me get up.
Okay, so why don't I stop this right here, and I actually want you to, Heather, Ben, to reenact that fight for me.
Okay.
Why don't I have you guys start from the point where you were pounding on his door, he woke up, and that's where the conversation started.
Okay.
Well, you said,
Move it yourself.
okay, move it yourself, go.
I said, no, I have to be at school. It's not my responsibility to move your piece of shit car.
I just got in bed. I mean, I just yell, move it yourself.
Whose
Tell her
fault
where the
is that
keys
that
are.
you decided to go to bed at
Ben, I'm
6
tired of
a.m.?
you coming home so freaking late at night. Your sister has to get up to go to class in the morning.
I
It's
sleep
not
later,
appropriate.
I sleep later, I work later, I stay out later. I still
Yeah,
have a job.
all
I still
hours
get
of the
things
night,
done.
all over town. We don't know where you are.
So Don, what if I were to tell you that I'm going to give you permission to not get involved in these arguments? I'm going to give you permission to be a parent. Remember we did our genogram, right? Mm-hmm. We had the parents at one level of the hierarchy, and we had the kids at the lower level of the hierarchy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you out of the role of having to get in the middle of their argument, and I'm going to have you stand back and be a parent. I'm going to give you permission. I'm going to give you freedom not to have to participate in this. And we'll see how that feels. It might feel a little weird at first, so are you willing to try it?
I'll try.
Okay.
So that is one example of Mnuchin's structural family therapy in practice. But his theories do not come without controversies. Of course, like good theorists, he also has critics. First, the theory primarily only addresses power struggles between different generations, like parents and children, not power struggles between equal generations, like husbands and wives. Also, it tends to focus entirely on the nuclear family and ignores other factors like extended family and social institutions. But even Mnuchin himself admits that his approach and his design has changed over the years.
My style had moved from being more confrontative to use confrontation in a different way. I think that therapy is always a challenge. I really do not see any possibility of changing people unless one creates some kind of stress, some kind of crisis that by which you help people to make unavailable their usual grooves, and they need to enter into a period of confusion, and out of which there is a search for new modalities, for increased complexity in the way in which they relate to each other. So all family to me is a family of challenge and a therapy of challenge and a therapy of crisis. I had changed in the way in which I challenged. I did not change in my orientation. My orientation is an orientation of creating conflict, increasing intensity of disagreements, producing cleavages between people, and creating situations in which the old blueprints do not work anymore. I have that way of thinking for a long time, 20 years. I changed the way in which I make that happen.
And the implications for social work with Mnuchin's structural family therapy involve working with families and children, also in substance abuse, mental health, but mostly in a micro practice. Mnuchin has also authored several books on working with families and couples. He also established the Mnuchin Center for Family in New York, which has trained thousands of therapists over the years in concepts of family therapy. It also branched out to work with families who are challenged by poverty, racism, and discrimination due to gender or sexual orientation. Salvador Minuchin died in Boca Raton, Florida at the age of 96 in 2017. He certainly had a very long and very storied career, and his impact on sociology, psychology, psychiatry, medicine, and social work will be felt for generations. And his legacy lives on, not just in his theories, but also in the practices that have helped thousands of fractured families put themselves back together. Jerry Springer certainly couldn't say that.